son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast.
Totally legit. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a very pleasant hiatus, and I'm joined once again by my good buddy, Mike Moshman. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, Jamesy. Thank you for having me back.
So, Mike, I just want to congratulate you on your wedding this past week. You did it.
I did it. Yeah.
I hope it went as flawlessly as you hoped, and you were able to enjoy as much of it as you were.
James, I had an absolutely terrific wedding, and I reciprocate and refract that compliment straight back at you. I hope that your wedding day, which was also my wedding day, and
we got married on the same day,
but not to each other. So, little bit of heartbreak.
Yeah, it was really funny. I just remember when I was sending out the invites, and I sent the invite to you, and you're like, "Are you fucking joking me?"
That's what I said to myself out loud when I saw the text. I was like, "There's no fucking way." Well, my first thing I said to myself was, "There's no way it's my date." And then I opened the invite, and I was like, "God fucking damn it!"
God damn it!
But hey, whatever.
Well,
whatever.
I like what you said. It shall now hitherto be referred to as our wedding day.
Yes.
And mine was great. It everything went according to the plan. With anything like that, there's always like minor adjustments you have to make. But Courtney and I both refused to let anything dampen our mood that day.
Yeah.
So like even the shit that didn't go totally according to plan, we did not care. We still made it a point to enjoy ourselves and not sweat the small stuff. And
will admit that I failed at that task in the days prior. I was like, oh, I'm going to let nothing dampen my mood in the days leading up to the wedding, and I failed. But the day of, Andrea and I both succeeded as well in keeping it smooth and rolling with it.
What was crushing you in the days leading up? Just like all the existential stress of everyone asking a million questions, or
it's not one particular thing, a sum of many little things, but just organizing everybody and everybody having different schedules and getting everybody together. And Andrea had insane decorations to put together. I mean, I'll show you pictures at some point. And just getting those all wrangled together. And I had, 6 boys, 6 groomsmen to wrangle to help decorate things. And, I was living with my parents during those few days, which as soon as we rolled up in the rental car, I immediately regretted that I was going to be staying with my parents for the week before the wedding. So,
yeah,
just all these things, man. But the day of, I shut it out. I got pepped up by you, and I was ready to go.
Well, hell yeah, dude. I'm glad that went as swimmingly as it should have gone, and we did it.
Yes, thank you for the psycho.
We did it,
We did it, brother.
We did it. We fucking did it. I've been deliberately practicing this just to be able to do it at some point. Like,
right here, buddy.
It's like right here, guy. But yeah, so that is excellent. That's great. Life developments. Look at us. We're growing up. Would you have believed that?
We did stuff. We did the wedding, doing the potty. We got all kinds of adulting to do.
You know what's hilarious though is that even though we're now adults, I can recall many a conversation from young ages until now talking about some very obscure and out there topics. And this is one that I never thought would come back around, but we had talked about what we were going to do this episode on, and we talked about at least touching on the Hawaii stuff because there was a bunch of interesting stuff there. But the point, I guess, of this podcast will really be to kind of unpack and analyze the weapons, systems, platforms of the future and how they are used, and maybe unpack from there if we're witnessing them being used, but we're just not aware that that's what is being used. So we'll jump back to the Hawaii shit because it's the most recent thing, and there's a lot of shisty behavior Okay, so all of the how the fires got started, all of that aside, I think it's worth noting that there was some super shady behavior on behalf of the local government there during the event, during the administration of the recovery from that event, and ongoing until this day, where they're literally trying to kick people off to build this fucking city of the future that they've been talking about since like 2014 or 2015. Regardless of if any of the directed energy weapon conversation is true, the fact is they're actually doing that. Like, that's occurring right now. They're trying to kick all of the people that were living there, completely forfeiting the right to that land so that the government can do something with it. I don't know if they're still going through with the city of the future thing. But.
Yeah. Now when you say city of the future, is that like a 15-minute city? That's kind of what I've been hearing, this term.
I think that's.
I don't know, maybe there's an overlap. Maybe those aren't the same terms, but.
No. You
I've heard about the infrastructure there, trying to build these 15-minute cities, replace the little villages that have been there since, before the United States was a country, and build these super modern 15-minute cities where everything is walkable, things like that.
Yeah, right. I'm pulling up a little link so we can look.
So I just wanted to make sure I'm seeing what you're talking about.
This does kind of dovetail. The 15-minute city isn't necessarily a new concept, but the 15-minute city is exactly what you're saying. It's a city where any person at any position in that town could get to any of the resources within 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And
yeah, it's not a new idea, but I thought that was what they were trying to build, was a super modern 15-minute city right where the fires occurred, essentially.
Right. So let me I'll just search for this here. So dude, it's fucking crazy. Like, I don't even have to get super crazy. First hit here. Hawaii's governor did not tell reporters he wants to. And the rest of that is going to ultimately be turn this space into a smart city. But
smart city, there you go.
There was a specific thing. There was a specific thing about the 15-minute city. That idea has been an idea for a while, and it's an idea that a lot of modern urban developers are taking into mind with city development. That there's nothing wrong with that idea. What makes it shifty here is that a couple years ago, they had proposed the idea of evicting everybody who lived in this area of Hawaii and building a smart city that was also a 15-minute city. But the smart city, meaning it was completely self-sustained. It was generating the power for the city via solar, wind, hydro, whatever. And they have been talking about that quite openly since 2014, 2015. And the reason that this gets super shady is because of how the local government reacted. They didn't try and get the people back to their homes. They moved very aggressively to completely kick people out so that they could eminent domain this area and enact this plan that they've been talking about. And the locals in Hawaii have been pissed at the government and intruders of all kind who are coming to their islands and soaking up all the pristine vistas and building these fucking mansions. Oprah, The Rock. I mean, The Rock is from Hawaii, but still, there's been a lot of analysis of his behavior in the aftermath of this, including Oprah's.
I myself am guilty of tourism in Hawaii.
And again, like, Their issue isn't with tourism. Their issue is with people who aren't from there, coming there and saying, this is mine now. And that's something that America is particularly good at. That's what we do. We just show up and we're like, this is ours. Yeah, this is ours now. Sorry, I thought you thought it was yours. It's ours. So that's the only reason I'm bringing that up is because, like, that's, in my mind, the clear indicator that there's something fishy about these fires. It's not the fires. It's the behavior of the people in charge after the fires. That's what my issue is with. And if you look at their behavior, it kind of seems like they're not pissed that all those houses burned down. They're not at all upset that all those people got displaced. They don't care at all because they have this whole other plan. They were just waiting for those houses to burn down.
Well, it makes me think of the clip you sent me where, at least according to the clip and the footage, there were a lot of celebrity condos that were untouched. And I don't know how deliberate that was or how random chance that was. But obviously, if there were more expensive estates that had been damaged, they might be more upset.
So here's the pictures are very strange, and I've pulled up a few of the overheads here. They're just it's very strange how some of this shit got untouched. The big argument that I saw that really started to open up the question of were these deliberate or not was the amount of things that were blue in the path of the flames or the fire that didn't get destroyed. So hang on one second. Blue items, fires. So there's
are you saying there's some significance of the color blue? Well,
this is where this whole conversation starts to get a little stranger. So the first question is, how do we? So what happened here? Did lightning strike? Did somebody flick a cigarette onto a dry patch of grass? How did these fires start? And more important, like that's a relatively simple science. People have been tracking the origins of fires for a very long time. It's very simple. People who deal with fires can tell quite clearly if this was an electrical fire, if it was gasoline, if there was a propeller.
Yeah, they're very good at that.
This is not some dumb shit. So it makes total sense to ascertain how do these fires start. And I don't feel like there's been a definitive answer. I feel like there have been answers proposed, but nothing that anyone has been like, that's clearly it. So
what I know is not based on the actual, the first spark, because you're right. I've heard like conflicting things about that. I mean, I assume people are trying to say it was lightning or electrical. But what allowed the fire to go and spread so far, I thought, was the super dry, non-native grass that they planted in preparation for all the infrastructure that they want to build for the smart city. And I don't know if that's true.
That's hilarious.
It was a thing that I saw native Hawaiians were upset about for years leading up to this, is they've been tearing down the wetlands and replacing it with the super dry grass that, they don't have forest fires in Hawaii. It's very wet there. But this particular grass they were bringing in, which is easy to work with, would leave them super vulnerable to forest fires.
Very, very interesting. And again, just another scenario where it's like there's just a lot of really suspect shit. So
agreed. In this, I just looked it up. The blue stuff. You should go to town on that, because
a lot of people were talking about the blue shit, and there's a couple other like houses with more like maroon or red roofs that didn't burn down. Their general vicinity wasn't too, like the property, the houses around it were completely destroyed, but the property of these certain houses were relatively untouched. Everything occurs on a spectrum. We see and interact with waves on different spectrums. That's how we form our reality. And there's a lot of very simple wave physics that relate to anything that is a wave, and that is just about everything. Every light that we see, everything that we use to form what we call the corporeal existence.
Reality. Yeah.
That it's waves, and waves interact with each other in strange ways. Of what we know, there's a lot of very interesting things about wave technology, in particular with visible and infrared, microwave, wave energy that we can't necessarily see, but a lot of our society is propelled by the exploitation of that technology. So, and this is something that I had come across a bunch. It's not inconceivable to think if you had a type of laser that was shooting a specific bandwidth of energy, that it would 100% interact with colors like any other color would interact on a color wheel, like when you're painting and combining colors, or subtractively creating a color by adding one color to another. That's not necessarily the best correlation, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that the whole blue roof, the blue car, the blue tents, there was a bunch of shit that was blue and it was completely untouched. Shit was melting around it, but that thing wasn't even burning. And a thing that you have to understand about lasers is that depending on the medium, depending on the surface that you're hitting that laser with, and the bandwidth with which that laser is operating, certain things might interact with it in ways that others don't. The argument here being is that whatever was starting these fires was a laser operating in the wavelength where blue was unaffected. Blue would not be ignited.
I don't know. That's kind of towards the other end of the spectrum of visible light from infrared, but I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Are you trying to say that that those areas where something blue was not seemingly unaffected is because there wasn't actually a fire? Because once it ignited, if the fire doesn't care about the color,
which makes it even more strange. And it makes you wonder. There's one in particular. Hang on one second. This is the most interesting thing that I saw, and it was the blue car. This got talked about
that's what immediately comes up when you search for it, which I just did for the very first time.
So, like, all these cars are burnt out. This is insane flames. You would even think, like, you see some charring at the front of this car. But you would think, let me see if I can get a different angle, like the paint's not even really peeling off this vehicle.
Yeah, it looks like someone drove in and parked it right after the fact. Which
right.
Maybe
and if these things around it are combusting and melting, literally temperatures that were high enough to melt aluminum, to make molten rivers of aluminum underneath some of these vehicles.
Oh yeah, that's radical.
You would think that there'd be some like telltale marks of this being too close to a fire that hot, but it just isn't. There just isn't.
Well, to me, that would mean then there couldn't have been a fire because the fire would have affected it. But if there was something more precise than a fire,
well, and this is where the whole laser thing.
Right, you're right. I was setting you up for that, but I still don't get like whether it was a accidental or just like a sort of a side effect that blue stuff was less affected, or I'm just not sure.
I've got some theories. Okay. I've been cooking up some ideas for a while, but
I also need to let my cat in. Please forgive me, James. 1 second.
No, go ahead. Let the cat in.
You know how it goes. She doesn't want to be in here hardly ever until I close the door.
My dog's the same way. Dog's the same way. He's like, he'll scrape on the door through the entire show. This picture right here is the one that was kind of making the rounds. And there were a few people who messed with lasers, like scientists who used lasers who did some kind of similar demonstrations like this. Depending on the wavelength or the bandwidth of the frequency of that laser, certain shit, it's going to interact with different things differently. And this is what I was trying to say before about waves. Waves do some funny shit. There's like basic physical principles of waves in whatever form. In sound, a common one is phase cancellation. Like if I have two speakers, one playing a sound, and then another playing the exact same sound 180 degrees out of phase, it'll completely cancel that sound. That speaker is still making noise, but because the other speaker is 180 degrees out of phase with it, the resulting sound wave is a zero. It's negative. It's complete cancellation. It's called phase cancellation.
So you mean there are waves occurring? We can't hear it anymore?
Yes, it sound like we only hear a slim portion of the actual full audible spectrum.
Of course.
But definitely with microwaves, and infrared. Like there's so many infrared cameras on the street right now. You're bombarded with infrared waves. You just don't see them because we can't see. Our eyes aren't tuned to those frequencies.
And thank God, because we probably go insane.
Well, it would just look like we were underwater because we're constantly surrounded by all these different types. We're completely immersed in an existence of abundant wave energy. That's what our whole existence is. Like microwaves propel a large portion of our society on a daily basis. How do you think cell phones work? We're surrounded by that at all times. And to think that we're not in some way influenced by being surrounded by that abundant energy is just silly.
And the long-term effects of that are still probably unknown. I mean, they have a lot of theories. Obviously, they assume that this causes cancer at a surface level, but it'll take generations to know what it'll do to our brains over time.
We were the experiment. Like our generation was the experiment. So when we're older, we will see the actual long-term effects of being completely encompassed by this energy at all times. I agree, but I think it could even be multiple generations down the road before they'll really know whether it's going to be irreversible effects. Yeah, sure. And I
obviously to be comic booky, they want to, it'd be cool if accelerated our evolution or anything like that. That's the cool outcome. I think
maybe the brain tumors
would be less cool.
Maybe the brain tumors that we get will all make us hallucinate that that's the case, but
maybe it already is.
Anyways, the whole point of me saying all this shit is that when I look at how the response was handled, I can't help but think that, okay, so then the other question becomes, do we have space lasers?
For sure.
We definitely do. This isn't like
so we agree on that point. I mean,
this isn't obscure science. In fact, known space lasers.
400,000 hits.
And again, like it doesn't necessarily, this is a prime example. A lot of satellites that we use communicate via lasers. It's more efficient, it's more reliable, it's faster.
Yeah. It's super cheap. It has like the more expensive, really expensive startup cost, but is exceedingly cheap to fire off a laser.
Yeah, I mean this is not I'm not just because it's a laser doesn't mean it's starting fires in Hawaii. This is also hilarious too. This always gets brought up.
The Jewish space lasers.
It's because it's such a stupid and common conspiracy theory.
I love it. Honestly, if anti-Semites like Marjorie Taylor Greene think that there's Jewish space lasers, I hope they're scared out of their minds to go outside. I hope they think we're watching them. Don't fuck up, dude.
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that paranoia. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for society, but I get some entertainment
it definitely isn't. This is hilarious though. There's this company that makes realistic switches for planes, like aeronautic dashboards, and they have a bunch of like they have like a weather control chemtrail on switch.
And people post that on Reddit, and all the right wingers.
Oh my gosh!
See.
But dude, this company actually makes these things. Like you can buy that for your plane and put it in your plane. It's fucking hilarious.
Arc reactor on, dude.
It's amazing, dude. It's fucking incredible.
Does I love this company. Fire in like a Hebrew font?
Probably.
Exactly. You just have a fire. You press the Star of David just to fire the laser.
But they have a bunch of good ones. And I think they just started by
making it's in gold.
Of course, come on, dude. It's the Jewish space laser, please.
It's better be a gold Star of David that says fire. Fortunate
Son activation panel. It's fucking great. Vaccine microchip master control panel. It's
this is incredible.
They troll, and it's release the Karen. This company's incredible. Somebody go buy their shit.
I want to have. I assume they make serious stuff as well. I assume. Not all of it is a troll, but
that's what I was going to say. I think they first started making like replicas of the specific devices that were in the space shuttle programs. Just as like a novelty thing. If you have a plane, you can buy like a replica.
And then they were like,
Apollo.
we should do Star Wars and we should do Star Trek. And
100%. And
then it just they all deserve to be millionaires.
Somebody was like, well, you should do conspiracies, and they just doubled down on it. But anyways, okay. So the question is, do we have weaponized lasers in space? And that information is probably going to be a little bit less likely to be discussed openly. However, what I will say is that since the 80s, during Reagan's Space Wars initiative, that's what was talked about. And for a long time, there's sufficient evidence to suggest that we were looking into laser technology, satellite-based laser technology that would be used to incapacitate ICBMs. So yes, we do have some exotic technology like that in the fucking sky. Yes, we do. It may not be declassified yet, but in 30 or 40 years when it's old hat, I guarantee you that will be
well, as soon as we're all allowed to
discussed.
have, a handheld one in our homes, that's when we'll learn about the stuff that they have. When I get my laser pistol, that's when I assume I'll also learn about how prevalent they are in space.
Yeah, there was a very good TikTok video that somebody put together, somebody who was much more well-versed in the known technology. I think I may have even sent you the TikTok clip. But basically, this guy goes through intense, laborious mapping of known satellites in the sky and thinks that he can place 2 Chinese directed energy weapon satellites above Hawaii at the time that each of those fires started. And this kind of dovetails on a bigger topic, and it's the idea that maybe weapons like this, the question isn't, do we have weapons like this? Well, I'll pull some up here in a second. Known fucking things that can do tangible damage. We have a lot of different things. The scale at which it's being used is unknown, but when you look at the increasing amount of catastrophic events, and you look at some of the known technologies and even the known use cases for these technologies, it becomes frightening in the sense that it's like either there's an actual war being fought right now between countries where no tank, no airplane, no missile is fired. They're literally fighting with the weather. They're fighting with natural disasters. They're causing earthquakes. They're doing a bunch of shit that can't be attributed to a specific country, but would cause real tangible damage to an enemy or give the person who was...
or causing a huge drought / heat wave all over the Midwest.
That can be majorly upsetting.
I have a lot of ways I would want to push back on that, though, because I don't...
Oh, go ahead. Here we go.
I believe I fully wouldn't put it past them, but I don't see the gain. I mean, what is the gain? I mean, resources, warfare is all about, it's a game of resources, and I don't see what resources are being gained or lost by on a large scale from a government perspective on natural disasters. I mean, who's fighting the war, and what are they gaining by it? It would seem like it's just little petty things. I mean, the wildfire was horrible to the local villages and the people that lived there, but ultimately it amounted to nothing on a large, world war scale. And so that's why I don't know what unless they're just pushing buttons to, show that they can. I just don't see the purpose of it.
That is a component of it. Mike, war is petty. War is petty. And these motherfuckers...
It is, but like psychologically, there has to be an exchange of resources. It's a game theory, and somebody has to lose something so somebody can gain something. Otherwise,
what is better? What is better in the terms of military than not being able to know when you go to sleep at night if you got attacked or if it was just a natural disaster?
Sure.
That
Sure.
fear is what this shit plays into.
But then how come isn't military bases and places like that are being targeted, or major economic buildings?
Mike, maybe they are. I mean, they're economic buildings, businesses are getting hacked all the time. That happened. Las Vegas.
I was
got hacked.
meaning specifically by like the natural disasters, like you said, manipulating weather and that sort of tactic.
Well,
it seems like that starts targeting just the most innocent people that are
some of this shit. Like, not all of this necessarily has to be nefarious in its origin. Like, the things that I'll draw back to are the atomic tests that we were doing in the 60s and 70s. We were actively testing atomic bombs and then actively monitoring what happened to the people that were closest to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were doing. We were just doing that. The government had no fucking qualms. You know, there was a period between the 70s and the 80s where they would just spray deadly viruses and diseases in the San Francisco Bay just to see how the people in San Francisco reacted to it. It was real shit.
Yeah, so you think maybe that they're testing the side effects of...
Doesn't have to be nefarious. Like this, the Hawaii thing is more cut and dry business to me. We want that land. We need an excuse to take that land, burn it, eminent domain. That's in my mind. That's what that goes to. Not necessarily.
But if the United States wanted that to happen and they were waiting for that to happen, then why would it be a Chinese space laser? Because that makes it sound like they did it. Like, aha, we got them.
And you know,
likely, I would say we did it to ourselves.
I might also suggest too that the state of constant tension that our governments pretend to be in, maybe it's a little exaggerated. Maybe just a little exaggerated. That's just a personal opinion. I think you could easily look at all this shit and be like, the common enemy here is the people. In every country, the common enemy is the people. It's not those rich motherfuckers. They hang out with each other. We're the problem.
And the overlords it's not the governments. It's not the Chinese government versus the American government. It's the Chinese billionaires versus the American billionaires.
Right. The international bankers. Right. Exactly.
And a lot of times they probably don't care that they are from different countries and they're working together anyway.
100%.
And I bet a lot of people from a lot of countries are invested in whatever smart city was going to go up in this area of Maui.
That's a real good point, Mike. I'm sure if we looked into the people that had a vested interest in the creation of that city, it would not surprise me if there were some very wealthy non-American investors.
Absolutely. So, but it was, and remains Oprah.
Yeah, it was definitely Oprah. Oprah.
I just want to make sure my opinion on that gets clear for your audience. That I think this was Oprah. I think every bit of information points to the fact that it was Oprah. I think she might be the actual true enemy of us.
I heard she bought like 4 of those Jewish space lasers. Just saying. Just
saying. But for real, she bought all that land. She purchased all that land.
No, dude.
Right around where the wildfires were. And as far as you can see from, I don't know, Google searches, her land was not touched. Oh, yeah. Oprah can also cause mudslides. Because there was mudslides that, do you know, for real though, did you read about the mudslides that in the same area? Sorry about my cat's butthole.
No, it's fine. I love cat butthole.
That's why I love you, James. Love a good cat butthole.
Yeah, I roll with all the cat buttholes, so. I
got off topic there about mudslides. That's a great point. Related natural disaster to the wildfires that occurred around the same time in the same area and has, disputed causes.
Well, it's a great point too, in the sense that like a lot of the wealthiest individuals that owned land, all of their properties were like completely unscathed.
Don't Google Maui mudslide.
That's got to be a subcategory on Pornhub or something.
Yeah. Well, Urban Dictionary will tell you right away, but it's not going to be what you want. You're going to need to scroll a little bit to get to what I'm talking about.
You sure about that?
Just for a different episode, maybe.
That's the mudslides. That can easily segue into some other shit. It has long been theorized that we have satellite arrays or antenna arrays that can bombard not only the furthest reaches of our atmosphere, stratosphere and ionosphere, but can also penetrate deep below ground and possibly at such a high intensity as to instigate or influence tectonic behavior. So before we get that deep, what I just want to bring up is a couple quick examples of energy weapons. This is a known thing, and this has been around at least since 2010 in the Afghanistan war. And basically, it's a precision microwave emitter that can hit a specific person and make that person feel like their skin is burning. And it, in fact, is burning their skin, but it's much more exaggerated. It's meant for crowd dispersal. So what you can do is, from a distance, a very safe distance, you can beam this into a crowd of highly organized individuals, and all of a sudden they run away screaming because it feels like their fucking skin is on fire. This is real shit. It was used in the Iraqi war. It's real shit. They can deploy it on the top of a Humvee. This is old hat bullshit.
Deploy it from
on the back of a Humvee. You'll see it. You'll see it right here. This is an LRAD. And you see, this is the NYPD. This isn't even a foreign war. This is an LRAD. And what an LRAD does is it beams an intense amount of sound wave energy at levels that make it feel like your head's going to fucking explode. On the back of Humvees, dude, in New York City. That is a New York City Police Department Humvee.
And I'm going to guess not from like super recently. I'm going to assume they've had access to that.
Dude, they've had this
for
decades. There was a similar device that the Nazis were developing. It never got deployed at how these are deployed, and it was much larger scale, but it was the same concept. This is very simple stuff. This is
and always remember that any tech
shit
that we have handed down to the bottom rung, like the NYPD,
local police,
then there's tech 100 times more efficient and more deadly that has not been handed down.
So the whole point of me saying this is that this is old news.
Mm-hmm.
We have these technologies, and they're actually brilliantly simple in what they are. It's something that I've always kind of admired about how simple this is. They're capable of outputting highly intelligible sound at very high volumes. The distance at which acoustic hailing can be effective varies based on several factors, including the sound level, directionality, the frequency of the acoustic source, the sensitivity and directionality of the receiver, and the transmission channel environment. The sound level diminishes or attenuates with distance. Consequently, as a general rule, higher source levels have greater range. Acoustic hailing devices come in two forms: directional models and omnidirectional models. This is just a speaker. It's a very powerful, hyper-directional speaker. That's how simple this shit is.
Humans are super sensitive. I mean, but we have, countermeasures. I mean, you could wear noise cancelers. You could wear all kinds of gear that could make you potentially, unaffected by that. But not the skin part. You mentioned how it would make your skin feel like it's burning. That's different.
That's a microwave. That's a little bit different in the sense that the auditory sensation is one thing. The microwave is a whole different beast. That actually can burn you. Sound can't burn you. It might rupture your eardrum. It's not going to burn you.
Well, and would be at least if we're going to do this on like a large scale from space, that's kind of the incentive to manipulate the weather, because you need clear air with no smoke and no fog or anything to be super precise with this sort of stuff. Theoretically.
And we don't even necessarily have to go into the weather control portion of this argument, but one of the things that has been discussed is, does some of the stuff that we're doing with these technologies have an indirect effect on the natural patterns of this planet?
I only brought it up because I can't remember if you mentioned it at the beginning of the episode or right before when we were chatting before the episode, but you mentioned the weather control conversation you and I had 10 years back. And my question for you was just related to whether that you think that's something we're doing in order to make sure that we can produce, clear vision for energy weapon attacks, or is it something that we're using the energy weapons to do to manipulate the weather? Does that make sense, that question? Or is it in order to facilitate the use of energy weapons that we would manipulate the weather?
I think both could be true. I don't think that each of those things it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think both of those things can be true. And the reason I say that is because in some scenarios, controlling the weather, like on a battlefield, the advantage of controlling the weather would be to extend the rain season or to make it cloudy so troops on the ground can't see the types of machines that you're flying above them.
Oh, or the opposite, because if it's really cloudy or it's really smoky, then laser weapons can't target.
And targeting in general is going to be,
if my Call of Duty experience can
now
be brought
we
to
do
bear
have
at this moment.
We do have all sorts of scanner technology that can see thermal, infrared, we can see through clouds in the
sure, but
sense.
Actual laser tech
exactly.
can't penetrate, or it refracts, or I don't know the right word, but it breaks apart if there's too much. It's not going to
function.
Smoke.
It's not the ideal functioning scenario, right? 100%.
Well, it's the direct counter to laser technology or laser weaponry is smoke grenades. Yeah,
no, for sure. And I that's why I'm saying I think it could be both. I think it could be a thing where we're using it as in conjunction with other weapons systems to achieve a certain output, or we're using it in a defensive way against attacks from energy weapons from other countries. And I guess another big important point to say is that other countries have this shit. We're not the only countries that have this shit. Other countries have this shit. Russia has had a microwave antenna array that is, I think, twice the size of HARP. They've had it since the 80s. It's a common thought that the only reason we started developing HARP and similar technologies was because the Russians were doing it first.
Mm-hmm.
And
once again, though, you have to. I must ask you what HARP is, and I need you to pop off and tell me about HARP because you mentioned it earlier.
There's a lot of weird shit about HARP. So this is what HARP is. This is in the middle of Alaska.
You've educated me about this before. I needed a reminder, though.
We've talked about this, and this, 10, 15 years ago when I was talking to you about it, there was considerably less information than there is now. And the term directed energy weapon didn't even exist. When I was trying to explain to people what this was, I was like, it's like a satellite that beams, it hits this portion of the ionosphere and then it heats it up because it's like an invisibly but super hot
James,
laser.
You're acting crazy, dude.
It didn't make sense, but I watched a clip today where they were talking about HARP, and it was before HARP went operational. The video was from 1996. And the biggest book that is like the anti-HARP is this book called Angels Don't Play This HARP. It's so stupid. But the guy who put this book together, he really goes deep.
But so HARP is an American.
This is an American antenna array. And I'll just read the first little blip here because it will give a very nerdy explanation of what it is. But then we'll talk about the actual application of this thing. So it's a University of Alaska Fairbanks program which researches the ionosphere, the highest ionized part of Earth's atmosphere. The most prominent instrument at HARP is the Ionospheric Research Instrument, a high-power radio frequency transmitter facility operating in the high-frequency band. The IRI is used to temporarily excite a limited area of the ionosphere. Other instruments, such as the VHF and UHF radar, a fluxgate magnetometer, a digisonde, ionospheric sounding device, and an induction magnetometer are used to study the physical processes that occur in the excited region. So what that means in layman's terms is they have this super high power antenna array. And it's a bunch of these, in this picture, you can kind of see it's a bunch of smaller antennas. And when banded together and powered appropriately, they can focus the beam that it emits. And what they do with this one is, at least with the IRI, is they beam the ionosphere. And what happens when you beam that much abundant energy into the ionosphere is you start to excite particles that are typically associated with neon gases. And what you get is the aurora borealis, the naturally occurring thing that occurs when the Earth is hit by a burst of solar energy. So in the early 2000s, there was a Popular Mechanics article where they're basically bragging about the fact that they can instigate the aurora borealis whenever the fuck they want. This was in Popular Mechanics in the early 2000s. So
synthetic aurora borealis.
This was like, it was apparently so old hat that it wasn't even classified that we had technology that could do this. Now, one of the things that guy's book goes on to unpack a little bit more is some of the more nefarious intended applications for this device, of which you can imagine. This was a military program, DARPA. In fact, here it says right here, initially, HARP was jointly funded by the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It was designed and built by BAE, massive defense contractor. And its original purpose was to analyze the ionosphere and investigate the potential for developing ionospheric enhancement technology for radio communications and surveillance. That was the original intended purpose. But one thing we have to understand about the military is that it's the military, and they don't develop anything for the public good ever. Everything that
and
they
whatever
put
the
money
intended purpose
right.
is just what they want the public to think.
It might be, so they're not
or
lying
what they
about that.
say in order to get investors.
One intended use, but there's other intended applications for this device, and a majority of them are going to be warfare related. So one of the things that this guy unearths in the process of writing his book is documents that suggest one of the things they wanted to use HARP for was not necessarily mind control, but the ability to mass disrupt people in large areas mentally, bombard them with X wave at X intensity for X duration of time, and they're going to start to behave in expected ways, probably based on lab experiments they did with mice. But all I mean to say by this is that even in the 90s, when the guy wrote that book, this was shit that was kind of could be confirmed, that they were already toying with the idea of maybe using this for warfare applications. The other thing that
ringing a lot of bells for me, for sure.
And they talk in great deal about the different bandwidths that it can project, but another Tesla had this idea of like the death ray. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. He had this, antenna array that could beam massive amounts of energy, across the globe. This was that. In fact,
you say he, you mean Elon Musk?
In fact, no, not Elon Musk. Tesla, actual Tesla.
Oh,
Nikolai Tesla.
I thought you were talking about the company. Excuse me.
No. This is hilarious. When Tesla died in the New Yorker hotel, Donald Trump's uncle, John Trump, was the DOD or FBI agent responsible for collecting all of Nikola Tesla's belongings. And it has been long suggested that many great technological advances that made their way into the modern landscape of warfare were adapted energy ideas from Tesla that he did not have the ability or funding or
governmental support,
or even just the infrastructure to develop certain new technologies required to handle energy in that quantity. So that's just another funny aside. Like, there's a lot of people that heavily suggest that this is Tesla's idea taken to its fullest potential. There's another thing that gets talked about, and it's the communications advantage. So one of the things that this research program was trying to determine was, is it feasible, or can we have enough of these things placed around the globe where we can use the ionosphere to basically reflect messages across the globe much faster than if we tried to transmit them over a phone line or a cable? Like, could we use the ionosphere or portions of the atmosphere to reflect and then receive that information faster than if we sent it through an email or something, like over an actual cable line?
Point it outwards.
Yeah. Same concept.
To send the waves out into space, which we're also, we're doing, but anything that could get them to travel faster.
And the less fleshed out portion of this conversation is that it also does experimenting with extreme low frequency waves, ELF waves, for the same thing, again, for terrestrial communications, expediting terrestrial communications. But it's also theorized that one of the unintended side effects of bombarding the confined system of Earth with these extreme low frequency waves at the amplitudes that they're being broadcast, that it can instigate tectonic plate activity. So there was a press conference that Stephen Greer gave where he had this guy who said he worked in Alaska or in Antarctica. And he worked at the research center out there, and he was in charge of fire safety. So he had kind of untethered access. And at some point he becomes aware of the fact that they have a neutrino satellite array that's literally embedded in the ice, but they put in these they're just they look like metallic orbs, but they put them in an array, and what they do when powered together, they can use some component of the ice to act as the dish of the array. He doesn't even go into super good detail about it, but basically,
well, he was the fire marshal. He wasn't a scientist, but I remember learning about this guy.
The bottom line is that the concept for that technology does exist, and it has been used elsewhere. And it's not necessarily exotic technology. It was just nobody thought it was being used there. It wasn't openly discussed about being used down there.
Well, that's very, very sci-fi. I mean, ice technology, ice as fuel, ice as parts of satellites. That was, written about by Isaac Asimov.
No, dude.
Many years back.
This is what's funny to me.
Maybe Arthur C. Clarke. Excuse me, Arthur C. Clarke, not Isaac Asimov.
All of the great sci-fiists didn't realize that they were influencing the future of sci-fi, but the future of reality. But what's funny is that a lot of the people that develop these programs grew up reading Asimov. They grew up reading Arthur C. Clarke. They grew up reading all these deep, heady sci-fi. The reason that our world continues to look more like the world they describe is because the people that are building it were literally reading that shit. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know what I mean?
I got to push back on that a little bit, because I think it's at least equally, if not more, the case that those writers and other writers of the time were just correctly predicting what future technology was going to look like. I think it's both. Like you said earlier, it's definitely a both. One hand washes the other, but in a large part, I think they were just, especially when it comes to you mentioning the ice array in Antarctica. That's definitely something I think that was just accurately predicted. These were scientists that were writing fiction, but they still knew what they were talking about, and they knew where technology was headed. But whereas the aesthetic argument, I totally agree with you. Cities are looking more aesthetically like sci-fi because we want them to.
Well,
The Ice Cube, yeah.
It's a strange self-fulfilling prophecy kind of situation where, like, you know, we thought we would all have flying cars by now, right?
And we could
have flying.
We could,
but you know, we don't. So this is the thing he was talking about.
Have you ever brought up flying cars with Ben?
No, I haven't, but
that's like Ben's kryptonite, dude. Bring up flying cars, and it'll pop his lid off, dude.
So
he has a lot of great opinions about flying cars.
This is it. This is what he was talking about. These are the things that get embedded in the ice. This is what the array looks like. And what he was saying they were using this as is the same type of research that HAARP was doing, but in Antarctica, and that he is fairly confident that it is the reason for the most recent set of earthquakes in Japan, including the earthquake that fucked up the nuclear reactor. And again, maybe...
Oh, because that's back to you mentioning it potentially causing tectonic
earthquakes,
shifts.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying
that's
that
damaging.
Japan... I'm not saying Japan was even targeted. What I'm saying is that we're playing with technology that we've never played with before.
It may, why exactly? That's back to my point earlier. Why there? Like, if it was a targeted, deliberate thing.
Well, if you look at a map, look at a map, that's the closest thing along a tectonic plate. Like that, if you just you look at the map and you're like, oh, okay, that it's right on the fault line that this was also on the fault line of.
Okay.
That it would have been the first if it caused a ripple, that would have been the first place to have felt it. Or maybe not. Maybe it was New Zealand and Australia. Yeah, it was the earthquakes in New Zealand and Australia. But he also suggested that this or another similar device was behind the earthquakes in Japan. His story is way less verifiable, and again, he's kind of like. He's not a scientist. But the whole point of what I'm saying here is that we have some crazy shit. What is known about it is crazy. Like right now, Mike, for 15 years, I've been telling people that we have the ability to trigger the aurora borealis. And every day people look at me and they're like, no, we don't. Like there's only so much I can do here. Like I can't bring all
educate
the articles.
Them better, dude.
I don't understand how. Like what is where it just needs to be more. This needs to be more flashy. It needs to be cooler. It needs to be more relevant. Maybe Hannah Montana needs to die. Or back then, Hannah Montana would have had to have died as a part of like. Some weird,
and then people would care.
Then people would have given a shit. Today, I don't even know what would make people give a shit because of how fucked shit is. You know, things are so crazy. Yeah.
What do we actually care about? I mean, I don't know. Once, like, you know, if TikTok were destroyed or something like that, people would be like, okay, they've gone too far.
Enough of this. But
it's true. I vouch for it. You've been talking about this for a long time, and
it's not to say that
at least the weather control aspect of it, or the environmental side effects, whether it's you want to call it weather control, that has a big conspiracy.
That's a whole
ring
other,
to it. But
that's a whole fucking other episode, and there's even that topic. Like in the past couple of years, bro, Bill Gates, a foundation that Bill Gates is in charge of, put out a thing a couple of years ago where they talked about they're gonna deploy technology to terraform Mars. Where do you think we're testing that? Where do you think we're testing that right now? Yeah, maybe one place.
At least that's what they want to do.
All I mean to say is that that's a whole other rabbit hole.
I mean, that's great. I love. I mean, that stuff. You know, it gives me a little bit of dread, but it's like 90%. Optimism when we talk about terraforming Mars. I think that's sweet. I mean. That's the kind of thing that it's still unfortunate. Like why we've got a lot of Earth that we could make better as well. We got a lot of Earth that could be terraformed to be more habitable, but we're going to put it on Mars, I guess. I don't know.
Mike, this is what I'm saying. where do you think we're testing that? How do you think we have technology that can do that, Mike? How do you think we got that?
Yeah.
Do you think we just thought it up yesterday and it worked and everything was right?
Well,
no.
let's do a dry run on Mars, you know?
Yeah, no. Let's do a dry run on planet Earth.
Yeah,
let's do a bunch of dry runs on planet Earth.
We have all this desert that we can't terraform to make, make it farmable, and we don't have all this. I don't know,
bro.
There's a lot of large tracts of land on the Earth that it's inhabitable.
None of this shit is being made for our benefit.
That's true.
Even terraforming Mars.
You're right.
You and I aren't going to Mars. We're stuck here, dude.
Definitely not. I don't want to go.
It's not for us. It's going to be for billionaires. It's not going to.
And they're going to have a terrible time. Maybe
it doesn't matter. And honestly, I don't care. And
that's honestly, a different discussion. For sure.
I don't even give a shit. Like it is. Yes, we have technology to modify the weather. We've had it for a long time. We do it in Nebraska. We cloud seed in Nebraska.
Yeah,
it's openly discussed that we can extend rain.
They did it for the Olympics as well. I mean,
2008, right? We had this technology in the fucking 70s. We extended a monsoon season in Vietnam by spraying particles in the air that caused clouds to condense and rain to fall. This is not new shit. And I guess what I mean to say is like, it's so funny that it doesn't matter how much of this information I can pipe into somebody's purview. They'll still be like, no, there's no way that isn't happening today. And for me, it's very simple. Looking at all the things that I've looked into and looking at how much effort and energy was put into researching it, it's not, they don't just forget about this shit. They don't just stop doing it. Right. Yeah,
and it doesn't just plateau off. I mean, the tech is always scaling upwards and upwards.
Right. They're always trying to figure out how to refine it, how to make it better, how to do this or that. I don't necessarily think that it's anything even super nefarious. I think if any weather modification is going on right now, it's to make what little time left we have as habitable as possible. Personally.
Well, and in the long term, that could potentially extend that really far. If it could be the difference between 1,000 more years on the Earth or 10,000 more years on Earth,
So I to me, it doesn't have to be a nefarious bad thing. Like we have the technology. I should hope that if we had the technology, we'd be using it in some way. I just also can't help but think the types of people that are in charge of using this technology, they're not people that care about human life. They're not people that they're not people that are concerned about the common good. They're concerned about American military dominance. That's for
mindset. Sure. But I got to bring up the idea of like of globalization, where we've got potentially terraforming technology that we do want to use for good. Only the form that it's going to take is like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, like a smart city. In order to really make good use out of land and make it more efficient, we might have to be tearing down villages that have been there for thousands of years. We might have to take down, ecosystems, and species are going to go extinct, and rainforests are going to be chopped down. But potentially, so maybe it's not nefarious in its goal, but there's nefarious side effects. The result could be usable land that wasn't before helping us. Stay on Earth longer.
But at what cost,
I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, we're not going to need the rainforest as much. Once we need every available piece of land to farm in order to, produce enough food for a overpopulating planet, at a certain point, I assume we'd go for like deserts and surface of the ocean first. But if we can really terraform, it seems like there's a lot of great applications here on Earth.
Well, and I don't necessarily, I guess the bigger point that I'm trying to make is that we were gaslit into thinking it's crazy to think that. And then in the next 10 years, watch how it will just become a common, oh yeah, of course, we're terraforming. Oh, we don't like this land over here. Let's fix it up.
I know I didn't
have the ability to do that now.
I didn't get in on the alien episode, but the congressional hearings, but it's the same kind of thing. We were gaslit for decades about like, oh yeah, no,
you're an idiot. You're an idiot.
There's nothing going on in Roswell. Like that's nothing. And then now they're just like, well, okay, maybe there was something. And no one cares
it was actually a multi-decade program of secrecy. Yeah, it was just our bad. Whoops. We meant
but
to tell
the best is how the internet didn't really care.
Well, but
At least we were like, oh well,
I guess
we don't really care about aliens no more.
I guess this is the whole point. This is the whole point of my tirade here, is that this is why I have always found it important to know these things, because contextually it becomes very easy for me to understand if I'm not being told about this, it's for a reason. There's no reason why, if the reality of our situation is what it is, there's no reason why everyone wouldn't be like, yeah, please terraform. If it's going to add hundreds of years to human existence on this planet, terraform right the fuck now. I don't care what the side effects are. But the fact that it isn't, the fact that it goes on at the scale that it goes on, and we're told that it isn't, it's the same thing with the alien shit. They're doing something. They're doing something that they don't want us to know about. That's why it's a secret.
And these are
something
potentially the side effects of that they can't really control. I'm sure there's plenty of side effects that they are keeping under cover.
That's in my opinion, that's why a lot of this shit doesn't get told to us. Even though we as human beings on this planet, we should know it. It doesn't get told to us because it's bad. If we knew what was being done to us, we would all be very upset, and then we wouldn't be okay with it happening. So they just
it's just the
not tell us about
feudal system all over again. We're just the peasants, and we don't need to know. And if we did know, there'd be more rebellion. So there's no reason to disseminate that information downwards in our direction.
You're totally right.
And that's fine with me. I like being a filthy peasant, and any little bit of information I do get, I'm like, thank you, my lord.
I also don't. I honestly prefer being a peasant because
it's convenient because you don't have another choice.
Yeah, definitely. It's very.
It works out well for both of us.
But the life of the ruler has always felt a little cold and sterile, and I would much rather
precarious.
Definitely more precarious. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, kind of thing. I don't necessarily envy anybody with the weight of any of this shit on their shoulders. But by that same token, I don't feel bad for them at all.
No, and you shouldn't, because they're definitely drying their tears.
Well, and they're
bills,
right. They're
like
fucking
Woody
sycophants. They're fucking sycophants. They have been forever, all throughout recorded human history. They want the power. They actively enjoy people suffering. I don't want any part of that. I've never wanted any part of that. So that's why I'm okay with being a peasant. I prefer being a peasant and occasionally going on a tirade about how happy most people are being peasants. But comfortable in ignorance for sure. I mean, it's definitely not a comfortable discussion. Any of these discussions we've had over the years, it doesn't fill me with optimism. Any of the things we have talked about over the years, by no means. Definitely.
Unless you disagree, but it's all very cynical. It's all very fatalistic, defeatist.
Well, for me, it's always
out of
been
our
like.
hands.
For me, it's always been. Yes, it's out of our hands. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I really want to do about it. But for me, it's just like anymore, especially a lot of this shit just happens so far in the open. I refuse to pretend like it's not the way that it is. I guess that's always been my problem with society, is that most of society, and a lot of it's personal choice, a lot of it is the life that has been propagated to us, that we're told, we have to live this way to live a good life. It's always felt like a lie, and every day that I'm alive, it becomes more and more clear that the idea of existence that we were sold is total bullshit.
Yeah, it's not propaganda
by any means the true existence, meaning for our existence, by any means is in no way representative of the true scope of what it is we're trying to accomplish here in this physical plane in the short period of time that we're here. So for me, it's not necessarily optimistic talking about this shit, but what it does is it quiets some of the cognitive dissonance that I feel with everything.
Everything.
TV, with movies, with trying to have simple conversations with people. Yeah, no, seriously, city life. Yeah, right.
Yeah, just infrastructure. Yeah.
What helps me make sense of an increasingly nonsensical existence is unpacking some of the most nonsensical pieces of it and disarming them of what if they held any power over me, they no longer do because I've
or at least a little bit less.
Or a little bit less, right. I've analyzed it from whatever angle. I've gained what I need to gain from it. And yeah, I'll take the wins where I can get them.
The peasants must take the W's, any that they can possibly get from
we need
the
them.
elite. We need the W's.
We need them.
Poor serfs that we are.
Well, this was a super cheery and rousing conversation. Mike, I want to thank you for coming on and going.
No billionaires died, so I didn't have anything to laugh about.
Oh man, they really hated that.
I just had to bring it up one more time.
Why? What is with it? What is with all these billionaire apologists? Like all the people that I feel like come running to the sides of billionaires when they're getting shit on. They're people who are convinced that they one day too may be billionaires.
Oh, dude, you just opened the door for a whole other episode, man. That's the illusion. That's the monarchy. Dude. It's still alive. It's still alive. If we work hard enough, we can become nobility, dude.
I'm not going to put them down because I see myself being them one day.
It's the ladder that we think we're able to climb. Exactly. No, don't get me started there, man. I call them cucks for capitalism.
That's awesome. I love that. Cucks
that's personal. That's patent pending. I coined it myself.
No, that's great. You heard it here first, folks. Cucks for capitalism. Don't be a cuck for capitalism.
So if you're sad when billionaires die, I'm afraid you're a COC, bro.
Oh, that's genius. Well,
CFC, excuse me.
That is honestly the best way to end this episode. Mike, I want to thank you for coming on here. Stay on. We'll talk about what we're going to talk about after. I feel like we talked about it at one point during this episode. I just don't know what it is yet.
I think we opened the door for a third appearance for sure.
Yeah.
We got a couple options.
Yeah. But anyway,
thank you for educating me. I needed to. Most of the things you talked about, I had heard at one time or another.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. With your host, James Oliva.
It's just going to keep going. It won't go away.
Clint G and James Oliva.
It's me. That's me. That's me.
It's all him.
Mix and mastered by James Oliva.
I did it.
For more
it's going to keep going.
Business, subscribe to our
we
YouTube
got like another 5
totally
seconds at least.
Business, or add us on TikTok.
This is
TLB
hilarious,
Pod.
though. I'm just super happy.
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Anyway, what were you saying? What were you saying before I played that one more time?
I thought I honestly thought it was actually you talking at the very, very beginning of that clip. I couldn't see your mouth in the microphone. I was like, "Is he doing that?" I don't remember. I was just thanking you for continuing to educate me and bringing up lots of things. You helped me connect dots of things I'd read and things you've talked to me about before, but I forgot about. I was distracted recently, so a lot of information spilled out of my brain. So you helped put it back in there, as always, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, I just opened up your ear and funneled in a bunch of useless shit that is going to be of no consequence at all.
It is the basis of our friendship.
Thank you for coming on this tour with me. I'm going to play this sound clip again. Stay on afterward, and we'll talk about the next episode. But see you later, folks. See you later.
Goodbye.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will we say? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.